Welcome back to the show.
Glad to be back again.
We were all virtual for so long. Now it's time to get back in person. Hacker Valley on the Road is a curated collection of conversations that we've had during conferences and events around the globe.
In this collection, we'll be sharing the most surprising moments from each conference that might change your work in cybersecurity.
People in the organization, your customers, they like to know the why. They're interested. Hey, security is sexy, guys, but people don't understand it.
We're just talking about how other people are doing cloud security and what people should look out for.
Yeah.
But that's good enough to help other people. So
That's incredible.
Welcome back for the very first time ever to the Hacker Valley on the Road premiere. I'm Ron Eddings, one half of the Hacker Valley Studio podcast. My partner in crime, Chris Cochran, he's not able to attend today, but he's wishing everyone well while we kick off this edition of Hacker Valley on the Road. This collection, this is live. So throughout the stream, drop a comment, drop a question, and I'll be sure to respond to it. In the intro, we mentioned what Hacker Valley on the Road is. It's a collection of conversations that we're having around the world at conferences, live events, even virtual events. Because what we learned is cybersecurity isn't all about the technology. The technology is a very important part, but at the core are the people. And when you think about people, who is highlighting people? That's what we love to do at Hacker Valley Studio. But another partner of ours that is always highlighting people is Axonius. Axonius is changing the game when it comes to content. They're changing the game when it comes to content that's highlighting the human in cybersecurity. And it was a huge honor for me. It was a huge honor for Chris when we had the opportunity to work with Axonius and share these experiences with the world. And it would mean the world to us if you clicked follow wherever you're watching on LinkedIn or YouTube. And also check out Axonius by visiting the website. That's axonius.com. I gotta say, there's nothing like being back in person, having that option to be back in person. I love virtual events, but there's always something that's missing virtually, and that's LobbyCon. You could be walking the lobby at any conference and coincidentally meet someone. And we had a few slots because of one of our guests backing out at the last minute at Black Hat. They couldn't come to the conference at all. We thought, darn, this is such a tragedy. We would love to have this guest on, but they weren't able to make it. And at Black Hat, Nate Burke, the chief marketing officer at Axonius, was checking out at a store. And during checkout, he met someone in the line. They had a great conversation. And what he learned was this person was transitioning jobs. And what he also learned was this person was a fan of Hacker Valley Studio. So Nate thought to himself, I got a win-win-win idea. And that's to introduce this person to us and also suggest them to ask to come on the podcast and fill that extra slot that we had during Black Hat. And what better way to kick off a new chapter in your career than to be a star of a podcast at a cybersecurity conference? And the podcast is all about cybersecurity, speaking to the cybersecurity audience. So I'd like to introduce you to Hannah McDaniels, a lifelong learner and a rising star in the cybersecurity arena. We're going to play a clip of the conversation.
There may or may not have been a cigar shop
Right.
near or around this Black Hat conference
Yeah.
where we had a chance encounter. What caught my eye, to be honest with you, because this is the 25th anniversary of Black Hat, there's a 25th anniversary Rocky Patel box that I have my eye on that actually after this, I'm going to go get it.
Ooh,
That's how
okay.
I met Nate. I
Yeah.
actually bought his cigars because I didn't know who he was. But I was like, oh, he's smoking cigars. He's my kind of people.
Yeah.
He seems nice. He's putting off a good vibe. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Here we are. And you know what? Being on the road at conferences, you get to see the humility that so many bright minds in our industry have. And what I learned right before the recording is that Hannah's previous role, she was securing the networks that we were using at Black Hat. This has got to be hectic. You have a bunch of hackers at a conference learning about hacking techniques, and they're staying at your hotel. It's probably a lot of work. We had to ask Hannah, what goes into the preparation? What is it like? What are some of the stories that you can share? And she shared a small glimpse into what it may be like being on the other side of the fence at a conference.
Think about getting ready for Black Hat or any giant organization, any giant convention. I think about people preparing for the Super Bowl. You're getting people together. You're making sure that, all right, we need to make sure we have this in place. Let's go ahead and drill this part of this aspect of cybersecurity. What is it like for the lead up getting to Black Hat?
The lead up getting to Black Hat, what I can share from my almost 3 years of working in the MGM SOC, there are property walks. We understand what right looks like. We get a really good baseline. We understand what some of our more vulnerable critical assets are, and we develop defenses around those specific assets around this time. Now, are we going to get everything? No. Can we prepare for everything? Absolutely not. That's impossible. And to be honest with you, that's why we all have job security.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Right.
All right. So that being said, it's a balance of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes months.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you begin planning for the next Black Hat as this one winds down.
Right. Yeah.
Lessons learned. L2, hot wash, after action, whatever you want to call it. Those things are invaluable.
So that is the start of Black Hat. We had so many great conversations, and I'll admit, Black Hat is one of my favorite conferences because there's a lot of smaller conferences going around Black Hat and DEF CON, and it's just nice to be able to mix and mingle and learn so much from so many people. You might run into a speaker at Black Hat when you're attending DEF CON or vice versa, and you hear a consolidated part of that talk. Sometimes for me, that's great because I like to try to be as many places as I possibly can during conferences. And when you think about Black Hat, it just happened a few months ago. But it wasn't the only conference that happened in the summer. We also had RSA. RSA usually happens in February or March, but due to the pandemic, we had to push it back. And RSA is another one of my favorite conferences because of the size. And also, there's other smaller conferences going on around it as well. And when we were at RSA, we thought there has to be some excellent leaders at the conference, going to the conference. And we met such a superstar. We had the director of CISA, which is the Cybersecurity Information Security Agency, and we hosted the CISA director, Jen Easterly. We got to ask her all about what is CISA's goal. What are the things that CISA is doing when it comes to private organizations, when it comes to public organizations. And Jen is such a breath of fresh air because they have big goals. They have a big mission, and that's to help secure the world. And behind any ambitious goal is a great group of leaders. I believe anyone that meets Director Easterly will walk away feeling motivated. And you'll probably even want to be a bit more like yourself, a bit more authentic. And we asked Jen to share some insight, share some about her. What makes you a great leader? And that's exactly what she said. Let's jump into it.
First of all, I don't think if I'm walking around this floor in RSA, people would say, oh, she's the director of a government agency.
Right.
So part of it is just sort of walking the walk, talking the talk with the crowd of people, both in the technology world, but also with people all over America, to be accessible, to be authentic. And as a leader, I think it's really important to also show some vulnerability. Yeah. And so I'm really trying to be a different type of senior government official than
Right.
most government officials that you would find, you
Mhm.
know, with a tattoo and a nose pierce and my like nails and my Steve Madden shoes that I didn't wear with me. But I'm hoping to get some orange shoes, by the way.
Oh,
Hint,
yeah.
hint, hint.
For
Yeah.
sure.
But no, but all seriousness, I mean, it really is about being more accessible in our message, right? You also can't talk in acronyms or talk in nerd speak or talk about the flux capacitor all the
Right.
time, right? You have to break it down into terms that people can understand and also that people can do in simple ways, right? Like our kids on one end, but also on the other end, my 89-year-old mother,
Right.
Yes.
right? And so simplicity in some ways is our friend when we're talking about what seems like complicated issues around cybersecurity.
Being authentic, being true, and also making that truth accessible builds an incredible amount of trust. So, question for you, and drop it in the comments: who do you trust? Do you trust your company? Do you trust your vendors? Do you trust the technology that you use? You know, many of us in cybersecurity, we've been burnt one way or another. It is somewhat difficult for, depending on your life circumstance, breaking into the industry and finding a great company. And then when you break into the industry, sometimes you may be burnt by a vendor that's not delivering on the promises that you need. You are securing an organization, the data, the people, the privacy. And sometimes it's the technology concept of or a technology strategy. There's a lot of talk about zero trust as a strategy that every security team could use. But how do you implement it? And do you trust your implementation? And, in this industry that we work in, it's all about trust. We can't operate without it. So, how do we build more trust in the security industry? And that's what Director Jen Easterly is focused on: bridging the trust, bridging that gap of trust between public and private organizations. And that really starts with communication.
Well, a lot of it is in the outreach because at the end of the day, like people don't trust institutions, they trust people.
Right.
And trust is really the coin of the realm in any sort of relationship, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a business deal, or whether it's a partnership between the government and the private sector. And for years and years, you guys know this, for years and years, we talked about public-private partnerships, and it became sort of meaningless.
Right.
And I saw this. I spent the last 4.5 years at Morgan Stanley that, that was the most important experience for this job.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Why is
the
that?
27 years in government. It was the 4.5 years at Morgan Stanley.
Wow.
And so, because I actually looked back at government and said, oh man, that's not working as well as it should at the end of the day. And so
Right.
a lot of what I'm trying to do to build trust and to do outreach and to be value added and to be transparent and to be relevant is sort of based on having seen the government from the private sector
Mm-hmm.
space. So I just think that's like incredibly important, that transparency in what we're trying to build, because these concepts, you can actually make the analogy that people understand about. It's like locking your doors, right? At the
Right.
end of the day, or double locking your doors. So, we've actually just launched our More Than a Password campaign.
Mm.
I'm going to do my own little PSA on
Yeah,
your
do
podcast, right? And the whole idea behind it is when I say enable multi-factor authentication, like Chris and Ron, you guys know what that is, but
Right.
97% of America, like, multi-factor authentication is too many syllables, so complicated.
Right.
Like,
Yes.
that's for somebody else. Let the IT guys worry about that. So there's two parts to it. First of all, how do you make it simple? And at the end of the day, it's just more than a password. It's not just your login, and your password. It's actually use another factor.
Right.
And that's an easy way for people to think about it. Oh, a text message, or if you want to do the gold standard, a FIDO key.
Yeah.
Right? And so more than a password, I personally like it because I'm a big rock music fan.
Yeah.
And I like the Boston song More Than a Feeling.
Yeah.
And so you can do like more than a password, right? It's like I have a terrible voice, but you get that in your head. It gets like the,
Yes.
it's going on. But the other part of this is also being much more demanding of the technology sector. Why at the end of the day, because it's user experience and it's ease. The big tech companies should be enabling MFA by default.
Right.
And so it's a little bit of a partnership across the board. We have to educate people, we have to make it simple, but also a lot of this should be baked in, security and resilience by design.
Right.
And so we also need to work on that.
Security and resilience by design. How powerful is that? If we all had that philosophy, if we all had that mindset, and for anyone that hasn't already followed Hannah McDaniels or Jen Easterly, I would highly recommend. And that's what Hacker Valley on the Road is all about, is bringing these conversations to you all. And since we started the stream, we had a lot of comments. So go ahead and drop a comment in here. We're going to be pulling up a bunch. Thank you for loving the music. LobbyCon for the win. And there's a lot of talk right now in the stream about just how powerful being at a lobby of a conference is. I think some virtual conferences are starting to bring out this element of bringing people together before the conference, bringing people together between the talks. And that really, provides so much value. And during RSA and Black Hat, we were podcasting between talks and people were stopping by, asking questions at the Exonia's booth and just showing love, sharing ideas, and helping everyone get better together. We do have the other half of the Hacker Valley Studio podcast on the live stream. Chris Cochran, welcome to the live stream. Lots of comments coming in, and we're going to keep on going. So we were just talking about government, the relationship, the building trust for vendors, building trust for the government. They're the ones supplying us information about our critical infrastructure. We can't really operate in this world without our critical infrastructure. Right now, I'm getting my gas from somewhere, I'm getting my power from somewhere, and that's everything. To have a warm house or a cool house, if you're in Texas like me, having a warm house or a cool house is just going to provide you so much more comfort, but it also might provide you safety. And who is hunting the bad guys on critical infrastructure? We hear so much in the news about ICS and the electrical grid, but that's honestly a part of our industry that I don't have much insight on. So I go to the experts. And the next expert that I'm going to be bringing up during the stream is Kyle O'Meara. Kyle is a principal adversary hunter at Dragos, and he actually hunts adversaries on ICS networks and was able to school us a little bit and share more of what that was like.
Critical infrastructure environments, your oil and gas, your electric companies, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
For me, it was completely new in the different terrains. Like a manufacturing environment is vastly different than an electric environment, like what they do, or a water, waste and water environment. Like what systems, and then there is systems that go across. There are vendors, that each of those type of critical infrastructures use, but like learning those different environments and like, why things are the way they are. And then at the end of the day, knowing that those companies are still working and growing their cybersecurity understanding, right? Like, and removing the flat network, right? That so you couldn't connect. I couldn't send you a phishing email and turn off the water for Austin, Texas, right?
Yeah.
Ideally, that shouldn't be able to happen, but that's one of those things that helping companies figure that out. But I think it's, at least in my area, it's 100% that. Not that every IT environment's the same, but we can kind of. That's why we have multiple vendors that can do different things in the IT world.
Yeah.
The OT environment's not.
Yeah.
So like learning those and what the nuances are there and what systems they have there and what would the adversary really do, right? And we saw that a lot of that when in Destroyer 2 malware that came out recently that hit Ukraine's power facility again. It's like that's it. Like you got to understand what commands. Like so, this adversary understood that environment. Now I need to understand what they understood. Right. So it's a constant like learning because I don't have that background. I have colleagues that do, so I leverage them, that communication thing, talking with them, that worked in those big electric companies or water waste management companies or worked for vendors of those that supply those. Like, so it's like learning from them. Like, oh, I didn't think about that. Or, I don't even know what this means. Like, I can read these documents all day, but talking for you for 15 minutes, I can be like, oh, get a eureka moment, and then I can go read the documents and understand those better.
Yeah.
What Kyle just said was talking to somebody for 15 minutes and having a eureka moment. That is the power of communication. I feel like that's one of the themes of this stream and this edition of Hacker Valley on the Road is communication. Being able to share ideas, to articulate your ideas to your team members and to people that aren't necessarily directly on your team, to the industry at large. And when I was going through this conversation with Kyle, I started to wonder, what do I really know about threat hunting? Sometimes when I think about threat hunting, I think about incident response. Other times I think about security operations. And then other times I think about a mix of both and also red teaming and purple teaming. And I almost forget, where is the line? How is it defined, especially today, by a threat hunter? And that's exactly what we asked Kyle.
Favorite things about hunting is that the path is very clear. In theory, you go from a hypothesis, right? See what everything looks like, see if you can find it, and then ultimately you want to get to detection. You ultimately want to get to where, like, hey, I'm just going to have this machine, quote unquote, hunt for me, and I'm going to go to the next hypothesis. But I think sometimes we get caught up in that getting to automation part, right? We get to like, okay, we can kind of find it, but where do you think that gap is between going from manual hunts all the way to detection engineering?
It's a lot of the same process. It's like, as a hunter, you got to think, I have a hypothesis, but what's my end goal? Like, what is the
Right.
true end goal? And sometimes you might not be able to find, you might prove your hypothesis false,
Right.
but that's not a fail on that alone,
Yeah.
right? You have your notes, what you did, the methodology you used, and then you're like, okay, I didn't find it, but is there anything I can do for detections?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the detections we had are working or they're not, right? So like looking at it from that angle. And we have a detection team and we try to do detections as hunters. We have detection folks that we work with, like, hey, I have these ideas. I think this might be a detection.
Yeah.
And then we have like, ticketing system, and we
Yeah.
work with our colleagues and be like, here's my idea. And they could be like, dude, that's a great idea. I didn't,
Yeah.
and then, they go off and figure out how to make the detection for our tools, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think you can just create a detection and call it a day and like, oh, that'll never come back.
Yeah,
You never have to
right,
worry about
yeah.
that, right? You know what I mean? So where's the gaps along the way? I mean, I think it's like thinking that you shouldn't be thinking about detections, right? And then improve upon that every single time, right?
Yeah.
And then, what's the methodology? Change your methodology. Your hypothesis might be very simple. This group is targeting this group, right? This
Right.
company, right? How could you improve that methodology to find it this time, right?
Yeah.
Prove it true, that hypothesis true. And sometimes you have, bias in there, right? You've seen it once, so maybe there's more than one time of that activity. So like, oh, I'm going to set myself up for success because I saw this activity one time targeting, but reality, maybe that might be bad.
Where do you start when you are a threat hunter? There's so many different places, and what Kyle was mentioning was incremental improvement, starting somewhere and improving one step at a time. And it's about starting with the hypothesis. You have a guess of what could be malicious or what could impact the organization in a negative way. In security, especially on the defensive side, what we typically do is do a gap analysis, really start to understand, where should our hypotheses start. And we get to this way of thinking because of the greats that have come before us. If you can, indulge me for a second. Think of your favorite hacker. Okay, think of your favorite hacker, whatever is the first name that comes to mind. Drop it into the chat. Let's see, who is your favorite hacker. I think everyone has a favorite hacker for their own reasons. And we're actually launching an award show. It's called Difference Makers. Sands was already running this show. We're going to be revamping it with Sands and highlighting the people that have made a difference in cybersecurity. Someone that has made a difference in my life as a cybersecurity expert is Jason Haddix. Jason Haddix has been in the game for ever since I can remember, and he's always shared his research. He shared his code on GitHub. He shares his ideas on blogs and on posts, and is just such a positive light in the cybersecurity area. And he always looks out for people. One of the ideas and concepts of the conversation that we had was this idea of mission and team and guest before Jason really talked about communication, and communication is what drives the mission. Communication is what helps propel the team forward. If you have both of that, like the communication, the mission, and the team, you're truly unstoppable. And it was so great to meet Jason. Jason is the head of security and risk management at Ubisoft. And let's hear more about what he had to say when it came to mission and team.
Say, all right, everyone, this is our team identity. And like you allow them to have purchase or investment into like what that team identity is.
Yeah.
Now they're marching towards a mission.
Yeah,
We've been talking
they
about
have a
mission
mission.
all day.
Yeah.
Did you guys plan this? Did
I know,
everyone
right?
get together and say, hey,
This is
when you're on the
something
Hacker Valley
that's-
podcast, let's talk about
Yeah.
mission.
Yeah,
But-
I mean, everybody has a mission, right? And
Right.
it doesn't matter what your company does, you can tie it back to a mission. I mean, at Ubisoft, we're protecting players, right? We're creating great games, and the work we do entertains millions of people and keeps kids off the streets sometimes, right? I have a great
Yeah.
story about my nephew. He's a esports guy now,
Mhm.
esports kid, very young. But he's gaming instead of doing like a lot of crap he probably shouldn't be doing,
Right.
and I'm happy about that. And I think about that when I think about our mission, right? So, and
Yes.
everybody can create a mission like that, no matter where you work, right? So,
Right.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when I was at Netflix, right? The main thing at Netflix was spreading joy around the world.
That's
And
a great one.
in order to spread joy,
Yeah.
things have to work.
Yeah.
Things have to be available.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure the same for you. I'm sure you have a lot of personal feelings about enabling people to play games, because think about it, going through things like pandemic, economic turndown. If you're in the thick of it and
Yeah.
like you're struggling trying to think about how you're going to feed your family,
Yeah.
sometimes in order to reset, you need to disconnect and play a video game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think about that a lot, honestly. I think about gaming in a whole bunch of different angles that I think not a lot of other people do.
Right.
One that I identify a lot with is like I was a nerdy kid, right? I was nerdy, just like the origin story of probably a lot of people at Black Hat, right? Got picked on, wasn't great. And video games gave me an outlet. They gave me
Yeah.
a community and a tribe. And now, with the advent of esports,
Right.
you can have a kid who's good at something, that didn't exist before, and now can be a superstar and make a career at it. And I really love that. I really love that story for a lot of kids these days, right? Like video games can be more. They can be an outlet, and then they can be a career now. You
Yeah.
can be in development. The industry is booming. There's always going to be room for big game makers, and So I think that video games have a tremendous positive impact. They've had even more of a positive impact during COVID. I think we all needed to de-stress a little bit during COVID sometimes, and
Yep.
sometimes getting on with your buddies on Discord and playing a couple levels of something or a
Yeah.
couple matches. I would have personally not made it through COVID without my gaming buddies, because while you're playing, you're talking about life and all that kind of stuff. So I have a deep-seated kind of like love for the gaming industry for in non-standard ways, basically.
I got the same type of love for gaming, having fun, bringing play into your day as a whole. And that's what helped me also get through the pandemic. During the pandemic, me, my friends, my wife, we would play chess together all the time. We would play chess for hours. And that helped us kill the time in a productive way. It would bring us closer. It would be fun to see who's going to win. I'm super competitive. And it also gives you that understanding that gamers are a lot like hackers. They're relentless. They don't stop. They push through, they persevere. And even when the game isn't going their way, they don't just give up. And that's exactly what Jason was just describing. He was talking about how his nephew got into gaming, and he's seen such a positive impact in his life and the lives of others. And we asked him to go a little bit deeper, tell us a bit more about how gaming could help. And that's exactly what we're going to play next.
Someone on the podcast, this had to have been last year. And what she's into psychology, and she's also into cybersecurity. And her son was a gamer.
Yeah.
She kind of pushed him in the direction of being in cybersecurity. And during her research, she found that gamers make excellent hackers and
absolutely.
people in cybersecurity, because
Absolutely.
it's all about like iteration.
Yep.
Like, oh, couldn't pass the board, let's do it again. Couldn't pass the board,
Problem
could do
solving. Yeah.
I can't beat this boss fight. Let's figure it out. Let's look at, I need to move this way. I need to roll that way when they do this attack, right? Just constantly iterating over and over and over
Yeah.
again. So someone that's used to doing that, they have the grit to do it in cybersecurity or even something else. So when you think about the grit, the determination that someone that is a gamer can bring it over to cybersecurity, what are some of the stories that you think about of pushing the envelope? I know that you were here, you were just hacking with Tommy DeVos, Doggy G. He was just on our podcast. And obviously he's someone that knows about grit, pushing through. Tell us a little bit about the experience that you had with him this past week.
Absolutely. So the reason I came out so early was for that event. So HackerOne did their Hacktivity Con, which they had a number of speakers come out and speak, and some customers come out, and all the hackers had just arrived, and for their live hacking event. So I talked about application hacking there, and that was a great experience. HackerOne was a great host. It was a great venue. It was at the Luxor Esports Arena. So I was speaking on an esports arena stage, which is pretty cool. Like that's a great venue. And then the live hacking events, I wrote a thread about them on Twitter really recently, but they're one of the most amazing experiences that exist in this industry. Getting 30 to 100 of the world's best hackers together in one place, flying them out and having them collaborate is a force multiplier I have never seen anywhere else in my career for finding, issues. And so, you team up with some people, and Tommy had an awesome into an application and some insight that none of us had. He shared that information with us. We found vulnerabilities with it. We split the payout with him. I found 4 or 5 vulnerabilities. My team found a bunch. We were working in a team. I was with Ben Nahamsek on my team, Zayat, who used to be at Blizzard Red Team. So just some amazing hackers, and we did pretty good. And the event itself was sick. I mean, the client, between both clients, I think they paid out $2,500,000 on their programs worth of vulnerabilities. One was mostly the second client, which was a little bit over 2 million, and then about 300,000 for the other client. But that's all vulnerabilities that were in a pretty battle tested application too. So it was nothing short of magic being part of that thing. So
if you're low on money, call Jason Haddix, Tommy DeVos. They got you covered. They're walking away with some big money.
And then we went out and celebrated and celebrated in Tommy style. So it was great. It was great. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I did not get a chance to go out with Jason Haddix. I would love to go out with them because that is some big money. $2.5 million paid out to hackers just over the course of a weekend. Pretty impressive. And, there are so many other interviews that we had during Black Hat, RSA, and coming up in future events. And I wanted to share how exactly do you go about getting these episodes? Where are they at? They are actually on Axonius's website. If you visit axonius.com/plus, you can watch all of the episodes that we had on this Black Hat on the Road collection. Since starting the stream, we're starting to come to the end. We had many chats come up. So let's go ahead and bring some chats up. When I asked who is your favorite hacker, Chris said Alyssa Knight. Alyssa is one of my favorite hackers too. I love Alyssa, and she is in the building. Welcome to the stream, Alyssa. We also have a mention of Jason Haddix being a GOAT. Absolutely, he is. And, bring the comments in. We are still running for a few more minutes. And at the beginning of the stream, I mentioned that Axonius is doing Axonius is doing epic content that highlights the person. And how could I just say that Axonius is doing epic content without showing you this epic content? So before we log off, I wanted to say thank you for joining the stream. And for an epic outro, I'm going to play something that Axonius put together and is completely awesome. So without further ado, let me play the clip.
My mom didn't actually know that I was going to be born with a birth defect. It used to bother me quite a bit.
She is just like you guys.
The message of control and complexity doesn't just apply to one subject in life. That is a universal truth. When a challenge feels too big, break it down to the parts that you can control.
Wow. All I gotta say is wow. There are many more clips like that featuring Amy Bream, Simone Biles, and also Hacker Valley on the road. So if you can, we would love if you checked out axonius.com/plus and stayed up to date with all the content that we're working and putting out with Axonius. And with that, want to say thank you again for taking some time out of your busy day. I hope everyone has a great Friday, a superb weekend. And with that, we'll see everyone soon.